What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Valynt Volumes. Very excited to run through what we have prepared for you today. I am Jagger Lucci, Head of Sales and Partnerships here at Valynt Digital, and I've got a few guests with me here today. Love to give them the chance to introduce themselves, but I'll toss it over to Logan for a quick intro real quick.
Yep, happy to be here. My name's Logan Kern. I'm on the sales team here at Valynt, and happy to get things up and running.
Thanks, Logan. Brett?
I'm Brett Orr, part of Plainview Beef. Look forward to doing this, and it's been great working with Jagger and Logan.
Thanks, Brett. Gabe?
Yeah, Gabe Orr, and also part of Plainview Beef, kind of heading up the operational side, and just really grateful to be here with Valynt and Jagger and just to get the team. I mean, everyone that we've dealt with, Ishmael and Dan and Bianca, and just been great to deal with you guys.
The whole crew. Well, thanks so much, guys. Topic for today's episode is to run through an offering and a raise that we worked on here at Valynt Digital in tandem with Plainview Beef. They were looking for a smaller offering of just over $1 million via crowdfunding. And today we want to take some time to really highlight who Plainview Beef is, what they do, how they do it, as they continue to emerge in the space of this industry that they reside in. And so to kind of kick things off, where I wanted to start is really just kind of the origin story of Plainview Beef. One being, what is that origin story? Where do y'all stem from? And also, what does the name Plainview Beef represent about y'all's company?
Yeah, so Dad's been in the cattle business his whole life, grew up farming, ranching, and I just been passionate about being healthy, through the years. And then about 3 years ago, we started, Dad really leading the way, got involved with some controlled environment agricultural things and started doing a bunch of research. And we just started to realize the potential of using that to create a healthier beef product. And so we landed on Plainview Beef. And so we kind of came with the idea, kind of tabled it to a number of our people that advise us and that. And they honestly came back to us and said, you guys are kind of plain people. You're kind of just see what you get. What about Plainview? And so we started to kick it around. And it's like, yeah, that's really describes who we are, what we're all about. We just want to keep it out in the open in Plainview. And so we said, well, what if we could create a ranch that raises cattle the healthiest way possible and actually bring people into a story that's just in plain sight, that what you see is what you get. And just tell them what we do from all angles and let them see, and let's just keep it plain and simple. And so that's where Plainview came from.
It's not very common. It's not very common in business in general to try and be transparent in that manner, much less especially in the meat industry, I would say. There's a lot of iffies about what you're getting, where it's coming from, all of the above. But I mean, for y'all, I think it's pretty apparent as to why it is so important to be transparent to these folks, because the contrary of, and being the large majority of other groups in the same industry, are not doing that at all. And so you've got these customers and people just eating stuff that they've got no actual verification or idea what is in there or what went into that beef or that cattle, right? And so as far as y'all's methodology to how y'all are growing the grass, feeding the cows, all of the above, there's a lot of differentiating factors about Plainview versus other groups, separate from just that transparency aspect. What would you say are kind of the key differences between kind of the sprout, kind of the grass-fed beef and kind of the sprout finished beef, and or y'all sprout finished beef versus kind of conventional beef?
Yeah, why don't you kick that one?
So, great question. I think I'd start by saying, as we've ventured off into this attempting to source cattle, it's been enlightening. It's been shocking in that a lot of the guys that have cattle coming off grass want to sell. We're finding it very difficult to find cattle that meet all of our criteria. Our criteria are, let me back up just a step. We really feel like, and part of the name Plainview Beef, we really feel like the term organic and all natural, those terms have been used and abused, we feel like, and have become something that consumers no longer trust, and for good reason. And here's case in point. So as we're working to source cattle, we're going out to source cattle that haven't been given a steroid implant, that haven't been given mRNA vaccinations, that haven't been on a grain ration, that haven't been given antibiotics. Mm-hmm. Those and have been raised on grass. Those are seemingly pretty standard, right? They're not so easy to find. Mm-hmm. When we get out there in the real world, what we find is a very high percentage. I was going to say a percentage. I don't know. It's 90+% wow. of the cattle out there don't meet those criteria. Mm. It could be, and voila, the name Plainview Beef. It could be that we aren't going to be able to find enough cattle to meet all those criteria. But if and when that happens, so far we are. Mm-hmm. But if and when that happens, we're just going to tell our consumers, these cattle meet all the criteria, but this beef that we're going to sell now, it got an antibiotic or it got something. It has some element that didn't meet our complete package criteria. If that happens, we hope it doesn't, but it may.
Right.
If it does, we're just going to be transparent about that and not pretend that we're giving you the same quality meat. Anyway,
staying true to the name.
Plainview, try to stay true to the name.
Exactly. So, yeah, I know that's, again, not very common. I know you had mentioned to me at dinner last night, you were talking to a few different groups and basically looking to source that cattle that meets all of that criteria. And you basically found that a lot of the beef processing companies that operate similarly to y'all will happily intake a cow that didn't meet that criteria before, because moving forward, that cattle is going to be on a grass-fed diet. Whereas the first XYZ 2, 3, 5 years of the cow's life, it wasn't on those diets and it didn't meet that criteria.
Right.
And it was a very interesting thing that you pointed out, as far as those companies are fine to intake cattle that wasn't raised on grass-fed a diet, and now will be.
And in fairness, I'm sure there's a lot of competitors out there that are doing a good job and doing it honestly and with integrity. But I have found that a lot of the ranches, the producers with calves to sell, when I cover our criteria with them, their response is, the other grass-fed beef companies didn't care that we're doing that. They just buy them anyway. Now, I don't know who those are, and I don't care. Right. But it just adds a new element, and it is part of the reason that we're trying to do what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So whenever you guys have done your own research, looked into it, what are kind of the health benefits from grass-fed versus conventional, and really y'all's version of grass-fed that meets all the criteria versus traditional?
Yeah, surprisingly, you are what you eat, and your animals kind of are too. So we're just trying to go back to the basics of what are we putting in them, how does it translate into the health of the animal, and let's not just make the end profit our sole, stepping stone that we're looking towards, our sole goal. It's like, let's make the health aspect of it the sole thing, and then let's just be transparent along the way. And if we need to charge a premium price, then I think people would be willing to pay for it if they knew that they were getting something that was really special, So I think that's where we're coming at it and tackling it from. What differentiates Plainview, I think, is from grass-fed is we have this sprout system that's growing a fresh, harvested feedstock every day. And that's completely in a controlled environment, which we don't use any chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers in the growing process. So we know every day what it's going to be like. We know what the water that goes into it's going to be like. We know we've tested all of it. So everything on our end is controlled. So we feel good about it because we can be transparent because we actually know, So I think having truth gives you the power to just tell it like it is, And so I think that we feel good about that because we understand it. Some we can, it's like you guys, we have models, we have data. The computer runs the sprout growing system, so we can get feedback, we understand. So that's the big differentiator. And then our ability to scale it, if it works, then we can scale it larger and larger and larger and produce more grass. And more sprouts. And so we have the ability to scale our herd with our success and with our demand.
Right.
Yeah.
If I could jump in here just to add to that. And listen, I'm about to say something that I've been guilty of most of my life. I've done it the same way. But the cattle industry as a whole, we, myself included, have focused on how can I optimize and maximize average daily gain, average cost of gain. How can I maximize, optimize the yield in the processing? Those things in many instances come at a price that we haven't really come to grips with. But what's the effect on the consumer that's eating this meat? Well, unfortunately, I kind of just was in denial that I don't think it's that bad. I think it's all right. In fact, when I started working on this project to do grass-fed beef, initially my response was, I think this is a great business model. I think it'll work. I think consumers are demanding grass-fed beef and willing to pay for good meat. I think I'll keep eating my grain-fed beef because I love it and I don't see anything wrong with it.
Right.
As 3 years later, after doing all the research, I'm absolutely a believer, but I wasn't to start with. Initially, I thought, I think it's a great business model, but I'll keep eating my grain-fed beef.
Right.
I'm no longer there.
Interesting. Very interesting. And is there any kind of key differentiating factors between quote unquote grass-fed versus sprout-fed? Is there key differences there?
Yeah, I mean, there is, and we're learning this. So it's a evolution, and so I think we better pause. I mean, the grass-fed industry is doing a great job producing the healthiest beef possible. I'd say the differentiation is we're growing in a controlled environment where we understand the inputs. You know, it's not having rain or natural factors like fertilizer, like any chemicals residues that could spray over in the pasture or whatever, you know.
Right.
Maybe that's present, maybe it's not. So, but I think the key thing is we can scale. Whereas it takes a lot of land and a lot of pasture grass to grow a few amount of cattle. And for us, we think we can really scale this regionally around the country. And that's kind of our vision, is to bring food more locally so people can actually come visit the ranch and, you know, see the cattle and get to know our process. So.
Absolutely. Completely hear you there. As far as kind of on the topic of commercialization, how do y'all plan to sell the beef? This is my first question. What will that selling model look like? Is it going to be subscription, one-off? And if these things are still to be ironed out, that's perfectly fine. But basically, where can we buy the beef? How will we be able to buy it? And then lastly, third question, how can people stay updated as that comes to fruition?
Yeah, awesome. We're learning this whole keeping people informed, but we want to being people a part of our story, and we're kind of posting everything on our channels, which is Facebook, Instagram, and then plainviewbeef.com. So, and then we're going to have a retail tab right there on the main homepage that people can see the retail site, which will give them the ability to buy our beef. For a start, we're going to start having a giveaway program in November, so we're excited to, you know, people can keep checking us out. And then that'll be an opportunity then for others to prepay for some beef that could be delivered sort of first quarter next year. And then we're going to try to keep it to, you know, maybe quarters, halves, eighth beef, and then we'll venture into cuts once we kind of get our fulfillment teams streamlined and make sure we're doing everything to make sure that the product is a good quality when it reaches the consumer. But it'll be direct to consumer and shipped by mail, drop shipped to your door. All of that we've worked out. We have a system in place. So
awesome. I'm excited for it. I know Logan and I were talking about it. We definitely be customers. We don't say that just because y'all are on the pod with us. It really is. It's hard to find, and it's dang sure it definitely isn't cheap. That's for sure. Going to Whole Foods and places like that to try and find that level of quality of beef. What does next 5 years look like? What is y'all's trajectory right now? I know right now everything we're talking about today is what y'all are focused on getting completed kind of right now. As y'all continue to scale, is there something particular that you would want to highlight as, hey, this is a goal we have for 5 years, or this is kind of what we're working towards?
Great question. We have a model which we, you know, used to basically help us with the raise with you guys, and that model just really wants us to grow about 1,800 head of cattle on feed every year for the next 5 years. So our target is really to get this first feed center up and running, get the cattle, get the rations all kind of figured out, get our livestock situation really ironed out, and then bring in about 1,800 head starting middle of next year, maybe towards the third quarter next year, get them on feed and just hit the ground running. So, and then just scale as fast as our consumer demand would allow. So
it's exciting. A lot of growth from getting that cash in the door. And so focusing in on the crowdfunding offering from earlier this year. Yes. Just this summer, Plainview Beef went through a non-audited Reg CF. They were looking for right at 1.2 million. And Valynt Digital was able to come in, service that offering, and help them reach their goals. And kind of want to highlight that a little bit here. But from y'all's perspective, whenever first meeting Valynt Digital, what were some of the attractive qualities in kind of what I'm looking for is why you went the route of Valynt Digital for this offering? Yeah,
so did a lot of research, honestly, to other agencies, other avenues. We had done 13 rounds of Reg D prior with our capital company, and so we had a good knowledge of Reg D, but we didn't have any kind of knowledge of Reg CF. And so did a lot of reading, a lot of podcasting, listening to you guys and your success stories and conversations with you and the team, and really honestly was the foundational advice that you guys gave us along the start of what we were trying to do that really drew us in. I mean, it was, I think, monumental in helping us to be successful in the Reg CF. So we couldn't say enough about the way that you advised us along the process, even though it was maybe just things that you kind of threw out there as, have you looked into this, or have you tried this, or have you looked here or there? So just the collaborative effort, and you learn as you go, right? But I think we felt we need to go to the best where you've had the track record, and that you've had just the success along the way that we could also glean from, and I think that was proven out. So
yeah. Absolutely. I remember talking about y'all having done a few Reg Ds already, getting cash in the door, and kind of working through the thought of opening up to retail investors with Reg CF, and attracting kind of those non-accredited and accredited investors simultaneously. I think one thing that we definitely highlighted is for Reg D offerings, typically they're much more simplistic in their ability to get done. CF offerings, you really shouldn't go that route, in my opinion, unless you've got kind of a two birds, one stone approach. And with Plainview, kind of that two birds, one stone is, one, to sell the investment to a retail individual, and then secondly, to be able to market Plainview and sell your products as well, potentially to these people as well. And so excited about that, glad that it continued to play out well. And during your CF offering, I know that y'all worked or pushed out a few different incentive packages, different bonuses. I believe there was something involved with kind of July 4th timeframe. Talk to me about those incentives, how you think it affected the offering, and any insight that you might give to people that are doing CF raises in the future.
We kind of did two different levels of bonus structure. We did a bonus structure just for all accredited investors, in which we gave bonus shares, and it was a sliding scale that ranged from starting at 20,000 and capping at $500,000 or up. But that bonus structure ranged from, a percentage or two all the way up to 40% for $500,000 and up investors. But, in the end, and then, to finish the second part of your question, was this the July 4th, we did a supplemental bonus. And what really happened was we had a number of investors talking to us about investing, saying, man, we really like this deal. We think this looks great. I think it's something that we want to be a part of, but your offering doesn't close for a year. We'll just wait a while. We'll just wait, and 10 months from now, we'll probably put money into this. And we needed to get going. And so we offered an additional 20% bonus for people that would put their money in by the 5th of July, actually, the day after the 4th. And that really proved. So we had, I think, $1.3 million dollars come in by that 5th of July. And primarily, I think, because we already had people kind of teed up from the campaign that you guys helped us run and all the things that we had going. We had people teed up that had pretty much made the decision, I want to invest, but needed a little bump,
A little push.
to get them to pull the trigger and do it now. So it's been fantastic for us. It was a really something we would do again in a heartbeat.
Right.
Really worked out great.
It's a great pivot that y'all made, for sure. Recognizing that those investors were kind of on the fence and they just kind of needed an extra push.
Right.
But those incentive packages have been very interesting for us to analyze in the market, how they perform comparable to other CF offerings. Because as y'all very well know, there's a hell of a lot of CF offerings out there. Thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Right.
And there's got to be ways to separate yourself and really provide attractiveness to these investors. And so when working with us, anything particular that y'all learned that you kind of weren't expecting executing an offering via digital marketing, and or anything that you would apply to kind of future offerings that you learned and didn't really know before?
Well, I think we have to give you a lot of credit for the actual bonus structure of the accredited investors. That's number one. And then I think one thing I learned right away is there's a lot of leads coming your way very quickly, and so it's like, wow, this takes a lot of work and a lot of time to follow these up. And the other amazing thing was, honestly, like 95% of those leads were real people with real interest, and I was shocked by that. Also, I honestly didn't have one phone call and like 200 some calls to these people that was like, hey, why are you calling me? I don't know anything about you. You know, it's like, no, yeah, I saw your ad. You know,
Right.
So I mean, we were reaching the people we wanted to reach. So that was also a big learning thing for me, and I guess just need time to digest how we can deploy that again, you know, and how we can make it effective. So
Right.
I think it, you know, we're kind of like bootstrapping it a little bit, quote unquote. So it's like that trade-off is like, how do we actually manage all this, right? So I think that was kind of a big thing for us.
Yeah, and being the role that you take and took in that offering, reaching out to these investors that had requested to be contacted by your team, it's a key part of the process for us, right? So at Valynt, our job, as y'all know, is to identify the investors that meet y'all's criteria for that offering, kind of spoon feed those investors to y'all. But our client's investor relations team, in this case being Gabe, that took on that entire role, they have to be in place to be able to reach out to these investors, call them, text them, nurture them, educate them, answer their questions, all of those things. And you clearly did a very good job about that. And so for Plainview Beef, we were able to bring in right at 180 leads. I think a metric I've got written down here, 179 leads in 55 days. And these are investors that entered their first name, last name, email, phone number, timeline to invest, expected investment amount, and specifically requested to be contacted by Plainview Beef. Gabe and his team were able to follow up and obviously get a good amount of those investors closed out. I think y'all knocked out just north of 1.2. Y'all were right at 1.3, right? Over that time period of 55 days. Yep. And so as far as kind of Valynt Digital's involvement in the offering, separate from bringing investors to the table, was there anything else that you felt like we were able to add to, provide value to, maybe act in kind of a consulting manner? Was there anything else that we added value other than just spoon-feeding y'all investors?
I mean, and you can speak to this too, but I would say we're still discovering that. Surprisingly, we connect with a lot of people in the cattle industry through the outreach. This is just great interest. It actually was surprising to me because I felt like maybe our message might be offensive to cattle people. But it was quite the contrary. Like they were like, hey, we're excited about what you're doing. How can we be a part of it? So I think there's potential opportunities, whether it's buying, sourcing cattle, whether it's, learning from others the way they're doing it. You know, there's been some real great connections that we have on the feed side that's helped educate us about how we might be able to do some things with different feed sources that could supplement what we're doing. So there's just a lot of benefit to putting yourself out there, telling your story. You know, oftentimes I think we get this idea when we have a great idea, is like, we'll just like keep it over here for ourselves, you know. But I think the great thing about what you guys helped us do is we reached a lot of people, and we realized that instead of hiding, is like when you're there and you put things in plain view, like other people come and they want to help and collaborate. And that's the beauty of what we do as entrepreneurs, right? We bring people in, we tell our story, and we learn from others. So yeah, that Valynt boosted that in a big way for us.
Well, thank you. It's cool to be able to kind of sit down and talk in hindsight about the offering, about how we are, considering what goes into it. I mean, centuries in y'all's family of involvement in the cattle industry to be able to have the expertise to put Plainview together. Our ability to come in and having the experience over the past 7 years running the marketing agency and investor acquisition agency in this manner, to be able to come together, because so many things have to go so perfectly for a capital raise to actually work and to bring money in the door. And so it's what we wake up every day and work on here at Valynt. And so it's just exciting to be able to sit down with y'all and say, hey, it worked. We're done. And we're going to be able to move on to next offering as you'll continue to grow and scale. And so as far as kind of what y'all's plans are for the future, offering rounds, anything like that, obviously, if you don't want to share to the viewers now, it's perfectly fine. But do y'all think that y'all will have investment opportunities for investments here in the near future over the next couple of years or so?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're still actually in the middle of the CF raise. So we kind of, I think, took the approach that when July 5th happened, we reached our initial goal, which allowed us to do all the work in setting up. And because, as we've kind of discussed here, we didn't have the back end team to kind of support all the leads and all of the follow-up and the work. So we thought, well, let's just do operationally, get it to where we're actually producing meat and cattle and beef that we can share with people. And then sort of first quarter of next year, we're going to try to hit the investor side again. And we'd like to raise $5 million by April 30 next year. So our papers are still there. We're still an active raise.
Yeah.
And so we still have an incentive program for accredited investors. And, I think, honestly, we've de-risked some things in the business so far with the actions we've taken, and we still have a very strong offering for investors. So.
Absolutely. We're excited for it. I'm excited to continue working on it as y'all continue to scale. Question for you. You might not know this number off the top of your head. I believe I've got it somewhere in my notes. Do you know what average investment was that ended up coming in? I think it might have been listed over on Equity Vest, if I remember correctly. But average investment across the board, do you remember that metric?
I have a number in my head.
I do too. I'm not sure. I'm thinking it was around 24,000.
Yeah. Okay. I had 25 in my mind. That sounds right too?
Sounds in the ballpark,
yeah,
for sure.
And so, I mean, for that, to put that into perspective, if one of our leads was brought in, our average cost per lead throughout that offering was right at $30. So just for kind of viewers to understand, okay, if you bring in 100 leads at $30 a pop and your average investment from these folks is $24K, $25K, even on a CF offering where the minimum investment is much lower, obviously, you start to understand the traction that we're able to bring to the table and the return that we're able to bring for our clients as well.
Yeah, I would just reiterate, Jagger, that what Gabe was saying a few minutes ago, I think we've been most surprised by the ancillary benefits that we didn't expect, even more than capital raise. Just the relationships that we started through that process that continue to be people that we're going to try and work with and benefit, hopefully mutual benefit for them and us. But we didn't anticipate that. So that's been quite amazing.
It's hard to put a value on relationships, right?
It's true. It's very true. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to one, benefits of crowdfunding offerings, allowing for retail investors and kind of the Jobs Act and democratization of capital, that whole notion. And then also digital marketing, right? Being able to reach those people simultaneously. It'd be hard to do that with mailers or a billboard or an article in the newspaper. Yeah. And so in being able to identify those folks before you go after them and then being able to actually execute on getting in front of them allows for that kind of, like going back to what I said earlier, kind of that two birds, one stone thing, the ancillary benefits. And so, gents, we really do appreciate y'all coming in town. Very happy to coming in town from Tulsa. Glad to be able to host y'all, grab some dinner with y'all, talk through what y'all are working on, what you have been working on. Any last closing remarks that you feel like the viewers should know, and or anything that y'all should share for Plainview?
I just want to say thanks to Dan and the team and just all you guys for your hospitality and just the opportunity to work with you and learn. It's been really great.
Thanks so much.
I second that.
Understood. Thanks, Brent. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to Valynt Volumes today. You can reach us at valyntdigital.com. We look forward to seeing you next time.